We have Patrick Fundaro, co-founder at BetaBiz and Visa Franchise. We have Jeff DUDAN, who's the CEO of Homefront Brands. Jeff, thanks for joining today.
Patrick, excited to be on. Thanks for having me.
Jeff, so you've worn a lot of hats in your career. Would love to just focus on how you transition a really successful business in the service sector with a lot of corporate locations, tons of employees, to the franchise business model.
Sure, happy to do it. I had a business in the disaster restoration / environmental services space that I built with partners since 1994. We did air duct cleaning, mold remediation, emergency services. We were a government contractor and an institutional contractor, so we had a very good competency in commercial services, working also in universities, medical centers, military bases, things like that. So we had a residential arm to us, and then we had a kind of a commercial governmental arm to us. I had built the business with partners. I bought my last partner out in 2004. And then really in 2005, had an epiphany after coming back from Hurricane Katrina and setting up a material storm event where I really wanted to commit to a franchise model that we had been working on since 2000, but we really were so busy and the business was growing so fast that we never gave the appropriate time and attention to. So I decided to burn the boats by selling all of our company stores in residential markets under the franchise model in 2006, 7, and 8. We launched to the marketplace in 2009, and then I sold the business January 1st, 2019 with 240 locations in 37 states. And I sold it to Home Franchise Concepts, the parent company of Budget Blinds.
Wow. Jeff, when you started refranchising, it was actually just franchising your corporate locations. How many territories or physical locations did you have at that time?
We ended up with 4 franchisees operating 13 territories across 3 states.
Was there a particular mentor you had or mentors or franchise model that you really looked to for inspiration in terms of executing the strategy?
At that point, because I wasn't participating in the industry, I hadn't met the people that I had needed to meet. And honestly, if I would have gone out and done a better job of, like Vern Harnish would say, make the list of the 25 people that can make an impact in your business. I didn't do that. And so we were trying to figure it all out on our own. We really didn't attend events or anything like that. But I was a voracious reader. We were intensely focused and we were rabid learners. So we knew how to scale businesses, at least conceptually. We had a good team and we had good tools. And also too, when you're building, we were working in Hawaii, Canada, California, the Caribbean, all over the place. So we were a small but mighty type company where we had the ability to be very responsive. So I think if you can run a disaster restoration business, it's a relatively difficult business to run. And it set us up well for our pivot into a franchise business model.
And so you sold the business 2019. When did you at one point think about making your prior company kind of the holding and then going out and acquiring other brands? Or did this concept of Homefront and scaling up in the current format transpire after the sell?
We did think about it. We had made some forays into the HVAC space at one point, and we did not have the chops really at that point to do it. We messed around with it a little bit. We really didn't have the chops and probably the resources as well to do it well and do it quickly. So much about franchising is being able to execute quickly enough to where your business, you have to invest ahead of revenue when you're building a franchise company, but you have to achieve some level of scale and some level of royalties because you can't invest ahead of revenue forever because you're basically losing money. So the late lessons in Advanaclean and the late years when I had already made a decision that 24 years and 11 months when I sold it was enough in one industry. We had really started to develop our chops in franchise development, which we needed. We had really started to interact more with people that were either building or engaged in or working for some of the multi-brand platforms that existed out there. So our education was coming up. And then, of course, when we sold the business, we were properly funded to go out and do many different things inside of the franchise industry now.
I've studied a lot of different business models, and it seems like franchising's like running a franchise business as a franchisor is more akin up to like being a software company, where it does take that long time to get critical mass, and a lot of tech startups don't break even for 4 to 5 years. And it's a very different reality than like a positive cash flow business that a franchise might open up in 1 to 6 months. They're already making cash from it.
It's really one of the challenges with emerging brands is many entrepreneurs have a really good business and they might have 1 or 2 or 3 locations, and then they get the idea through various channels to franchise the business. And that's great. I mean, we believe that franchising is the greatest wealth creation business model ever invented. There's many stories of people that started in franchising at the single unit level, like Mr. Richardson, who owned the Carolina Panthers. He was Johnny Unitas' tight end, and he wanted $500 a game. I think the numbers are right from his book, and they only wanted to pay him $250. So he quit, and he took the money that he had made in the NFL and he bought a Hardee's restaurant. Well, he ended up quitting the NFL, buying a Hardee's, building that to 400 Hardee's locations, and then ultimately buying and starting the Carolina Panthers. So, and by the way, the NFL is another version of a franchise. So
It is.
it's
Licensed business franchise. It's a different legal term, but essentially someone's hit product market fit and other people can distribute that service or whatever it is.
Exactly. But when you light the fuse of a franchise, you have to run towards the first step is called royalty self-sufficiency, meaning you don't have to sell a deal that month to make money from your royalties or to break even from your royalties. And you have everything that you need in terms of this, what we call the 6 pillars. You have franchise development capability. You've got marketing capabilities. You've got operations capabilities. You've got technology capabilities. We call it something customer voice, that a quality, responsible franchisor finds ways to let the voice of the customer fall directly on their ears so they can monitor satisfaction, net promoter score out there. You don't want to look at a franchise and say, oh man, these people have 10 one-star reviews. Without, you want to catch that stuff early. It signifies there's a problem. You need to get in there and figure out how you can help that franchisee. And then, of course, business office is another pillar that has to be done well. So you need to have competency and excellence in all of these areas to really provide top-level support to franchisees. And while some things can be outsourced, there's just expenses with these. So getting up to royalty self-sufficiency first, and then being able to grow the average unit volume of those franchisees further, and then up to and even including, and then getting up to a certain point where you're what would be considered normally profitable as a franchisor. And depending on the unit volumes in the industry, those numbers vary a little bit. But, generally, if you're looking at service businesses, you're talking 40 to 60 operators out there for royalty self-sufficiency, and then maybe 80 to 100 franchisees that are operating in a system, and they're doing some of them are hitting numbers, right? They're mature. They're in their 3rd and 4th or 5th year. They built the business. You've got a good blended average unit volume out there. You should be normally profitable. And at that point, you've built a very valuable business for the marketplace.
Could you tell us a little bit about Homefront Brands and what brands you currently have and what you're looking to do to expand upon that portfolio?
Yeah, absolutely. So Homefront Brands was something that my brother and my son and I talked about and really came out of asking ourselves one question. And that question was, if we could build the most responsible franchise platform that we could possibly imagine, what would that look like? And the follow-up question is, would we have the courage to spend the money to do it? So we identified 7 areas where you could look into the industry and see that there was another company, usually multi-billion-dollar companies, Dunkin' Brands, Authority, these types of companies, and say they did this right, whether it be territory model, whether it be, intelligent territory design, whether it be conforming brands. Like they really had brands that had high average unit volumes, solid profitability, yet the businesses weren't so hard to run. You don't want to give a franchisee a jet airplane. You want to have businesses that are good for people. So all of these things around the brand. There was a certain amount of intellectual and human capital that you really needed to hire. So if you wanted to build something that was going to be a multi-billion-dollar, multi-brand platform, then you needed people that had done that before for other companies, because they would be making decisions against a future state that they knew, versus an emerging person who's built, like I was building my first franchise. I was just trying to figure it all out. So we found these 7 things: enterprise level technology, enterprise level customer acquisition, territory design, learning management is another one. So we invested, we had to, we decided to invest in a learning management executive who built a learning management platform over a year before the first person was ever on it and trained on it. So we said, all right, here's what it would look like if we were going to build the house for franchisees where they could be dynastic in nature, meaning they could build large businesses and create generational wealth for themselves and their families on Main Street, USA.
You don't have to say the number, but it seems like a $5 million plus commitment of time and capital to get this infrastructure set up.
Yeah, your math's pretty good. So then we went out, we solidified our business building thesis, and then we went out and acquired 6 companies into the platform and spent the year doing things like building the learning management system based on the brand's IP. Like, what did they do? And migrating them all onto the same operating platform at the core. So now we have, a data lake, and we just rolled out dashboards from comparative analytics and benchmarking between all the franchisees within a brand and over 16 different KPIs, sales, operations, marketing. So now that all that's set up, we can continue to iterate on data and get machine learning and artificial intelligence crawling inside of our data lake. And really, everything is about giving the franchise, us not being the constraint to franchisees' growth. Because what happens in an emerging brand, like the first, when I built mine, it took 15 years to get the thing to the marketplace, is that if you're not properly set up and properly capitalized, you implement things with the franchisees that eventually the system's going to outgrow. And then you're putting your franchisees through switching cost of, hey, we need to change the whole system, everybody. Let's just, some of them are so busy, they don't have time. Some of them don't want to, it's just you got all these different businesses at different places and nobody's happy about it. It doesn't matter if the system's better, because if you know how to use the old one, then it's easier. So what we did was we tried to we were futuring and engineering all of those constraints and those chasms that emerging brands go through out of it by doing all the investment and everything up front. And then we did that for about 12 months from the acquisition of our first brand to the time that we went to market and started awarding and selling franchises. So,
and who's we? Anyone outside the DUDAN family?
No, just the 3 of us. No, we've actually gone from 9 people a little over a year ago to now 54.
So 54. I meant, sorry, from the ownership group. Is there like a private equity backer, or is it?
No, we're family funded. We funded it.
Okay,
yeah.
So that's impressive. Yeah. Family funded, and you've already grown to 55 employees at the corporate office supporting franchisees.
That's right, 54. Unless it sounds like you're looking for a job. No, so 50. Yeah, so we're there, and a full team of really qualified executives and. A really interesting and very impressive staff of people from all over the world, actually, that have done exactly what we need. If the thesis is we're building this platform that's going to meet these requirements and provide these opportunities, then you needed the people that had done that stuff before. So,
what's the current coverage ratio? Like, you have 54 corporate employees. How many current franchisees?
So we're roughly about, maybe 130 franchisees. We'll award 170 during this calendar year franchisees over about 350 to 400 territories.
Okay. Still, even if it goes 6-1, I hear a lot worse ratios with brands, especially those that are having rapid growth. Yeah. You might have 1 corporate employee per 20 franchisees.
Yeah. It depends. It depends on, so much of what we're doing has been building. It's a different organization. The thing is, we're not going to outgrow our executives anytime soon, or our director or VP or director levels, because they all come from companies that have done this before, which is kind of, if you think about it, like most people say, that would be irresponsible, right? To invest that. But
not if you're confident in what you're doing.
It's like Field of Dreams, right? It's like if we know now, if we onboard another brand, it's going to be fast. It's going to be professional. We know, our people are now trained. It takes a year or two to get everybody trained and doing the right job and working together. And then, of course, managing the culture intentionally. And we had a Spirit Week this week here, and a couple of our employees just took it on themselves to do Spirit Week. So, I mean, yesterday, everybody had to turn in like a grade school picture, and she was dribbling them out during the day, and you were having to guess who it was, which was great. And then right now we built a huge gazebo. We have a 22,000 square foot facility on 5 acres. And, we built a gazebo this spring for a huge gazebo and outdoor living area and patio and fire pits and all that. So that we're out there having a little Friday afternoon end of Spirit Week. And when we have our Meet the Team days, we all go out there and have a lunch. I mean, it's a family environment.
Yeah.
And relationships in franchising are everything. And the relationship equity that you build with your franchisees is critically important, because really some of them are first-time business owners. Some of them are been very successful in their careers, but not this career. So there's always this adult learning. There's always change management. There's always friction. That it's just, business is hard. I mean, business is full contact. So it doesn't matter what you're doing. So we have to make sure that we're what we call in the pocket. It's a boxing term. So, one of our values is servant leadership. And that means that we have to be close of you to get you what you truly need, not what you say you want in the moment. And to do that, we have to have a certain level of relationship, because your numbers might be down and we'll be calling and saying, hey, we see the numbers. It's not been typical for you. Well, our market's slow. Oh, our salespeople aren't doing it, or whatever. And then you find out, okay, well, I'm going through a divorce. Okay. Now we're working on the right problem. If we're not working on the right problem, then we're not helping anybody. So
you can go and be like, okay, let's get some other franchisee. He can experience share. Like, we want to help you get past this, because this is your big roadblock.
Yeah. 3 words you'll hear around here: whatever it takes. Like, if we're really in business with somebody, it's whatever it takes. Yes. And that's just it.
And I know you're super into the athlete mindset. I played lacrosse in college. I loved to surf, swim, all about sports.
What position in lacrosse?
I was midfield. I was midfield at high school, and then I wasn't good enough with my 6 skills in college, so I was FOGO, face off and get off the field.
Oh, well, that's an important position. Were you long stick or short stick midi?
Short stick.
Short stick midi. That's what my son did.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Left-hander or right-hander?
Lefty.
I knew it. I could tell by looking at you.
If someone didn't study the game film, I could always do a split dodge.
Yeah.
Lacrosse, I learned so much from it, and I saw getting a job on Wall Street right out of graduation. There are a lot of athletes.
Oh yeah. Well, so my book is called Discernment. It's the business athlete's regimen for a great life through better decisions, and the thesis is that wisdom is really models of thought that are accumulated over a lifetime applied to a present day situation. And anything can go to 0 and nothing's 100%. So the quality of your decisions determines the quality of the velocity of your business and the quality of your life. So what filters do you use when you go and you make important decisions at an inflection point in your life? Do you just take it? So when I shared earlier that I decided to sell all of my company stores under a franchise model. Well, I decided that driving in the middle of the night, trying to return an RV that we had rented for Hurricane Katrina, and I had missed my son's first football season. So I'm trying to drive overnight to get home for an 8 a.m. Practice or scrimmage or game or whatever it was. And I just made that decision. I said, this is untenable for me. I mean, I went to 3 colleges. I got a fine 4-year degree in over 5.5 years. And, I'm like, history is repeating itself here. I'm an absentee father, and that didn't sit right with my values, because your true values are what you tolerate. So, in that inflection points, which always have 3 things. They have people that you care about or that you're doing something with. They have a great opportunity or an adventure, and then they have the risk of loss. You've got to usually give something up to get something better. So if you find yourself and you identify yourself in that spot, how do you make that decision well? Because you make a bad decision today is nothing but a debt on your future time, energy, and money. You get into business with somebody. Now you've got this, we've got it started. You didn't think it all the way through. It's a dead end. And now we've got to unwind the whole thing and apologize to people. And hopefully you didn't ask anyone to invest and all of that kind of stuff. So the discernment book is really about, improving, at least letting you sit a beat, and then sharing all my models of thought over 25 years of business building to help you think about those really key decisions in your life.
Very cool. We'll include a link in the show notes to that. And then I need to read it, or is it on Audible?
It is on Audible. If you're an audio learner, you can do that. And it's on Amazon. $12. It also shores up uneven Christmas tree legs or things like that. It's very handy to have around the house.
And tell me, you've talked a lot about culture, the family environment across the whole Homefront organization. What do you look for in the franchisees where you're like, if I can have someone with this mindset, we would have them sign up and enter into a long-term partnership day after day?
The most important thing in a franchisee, and I got this from Charlie Chase. You talked about mentors, and he was a mentor to mine, sometimes in person, sometimes just listening to him speak somewhere. He said, you don't want arsonists in your treehouse. So what we look for is people that, first and foremost, resolve conflicts in a healthy manner. There's always conflicts in business, but we have to take accountability for our piece of it. And so, I teach people, I did a little keynote this morning, actually. I was hustling. I did something down in Charlotte for a group of now 60, 70 people, whatever it was. So I got this bit where I said, I've got 3 words for you. And then I say, by the way, it's the words that I got my wife ultimately to marry me. And everyone's like, I love you. And I'm like, lower your standards. So that's the thing, right? But actually the 3 words are rush to conflict. So we have something in our head, we're talking about it, but like we don't go and just rush into the situation. It goes on, it festers, you talk about it in the car, and then it keeps happening again. But you have to actually tie that together with a great quote from Edwin Freeman that says, the person who can most accurately describe reality without laying blame shall emerge the leader. So learning to rush to conflict. So one of and rush in there, but yet not just start blaming, you did this, you did that, you did the other thing. I thought this. I hate the word anytime anybody says I thought, they're basically calling you a dumbass. Right? I thought, and I was clearly mistaken because you were wrong, right? In what you told me. I thought, I hate that. But so rushing to conflict, describing reality in a healthy manner. So contracting with my franchisees, meaning in Meet the Team Day, and I do the first 2 hours of training with all of our franchisees, we basically make a contract that says, you are going to pick up the phone.
Yeah.
You're not going to go on an email campaign. You're not going to call all the other franchisees and tell them how wronged you feel. You're going to just pick up the phone, and we're going to rush to it, and we're going to resolve it in a healthy manner. And we're never going to pull out the contract. You don't pull out the contract, man. You talk to people.
It's pretty bad. Like once you're referencing the contract, that's one level removed from like bringing in attorneys, and then the divorce happens, the franchise divorce.
And sometimes you get there, or there could be a clarification. But I mean, in most situations, the program is set up in such a way for franchisees to be successful. We're intellectually humble in the fact that I think we're the only company I know that gets a net promoter score every month from our franchisees. So the other
every month's amazing.
It is. So and we went up 40, we rolled out dashboards, and we've had some marketing success and some things that were dragging for us a little bit. And we went up 40 points last month, and we had a much, much, much higher response to the survey. But I tell them, I said, look, feedback is the breakfast of champions. You need to spend 5 to 10 hours every month and tell us your perception of things you don't understand, things we're not doing well, anything that's short, because we can only iterate objectively on data. And if you don't give us the data, then we're trying to figure out where we need to focus our priorities. So net promoter score is really important. Making sure that and that you're not tone deaf to feedback. As organizations get 40 or 50 years, and I up into the multi-billions of dollars, and it's been running the same way for 30 years. It's a driven brand, one of those iconic brands like a Meineke or a Mako. Like, okay, well, the program's kind of probably the program at that point. You're reacting to market conditions and things, but ultimately, when you're in a fast-growing organization like we are, and we're just we're selling out concepts in 18 months now, which is selling out maybe 60 to 70% of all territories that are cut, and all major markets. Well,
But if the
there's a lot of,
franchisor is fast growing, the franchisee needs to have that same mindset that this is high growth. This isn't for the faint of heart. Like, we're doing this fast.
yeah, and we need to work together. Yeah, we got to work together. So doing all of the things to make sure that there's high engagement, there's radical transparency, there's high truth and high trust. That's responsible franchising.
So I hear so much bad and good on franchising, and we try to report too. Sadly, I get like demand letters every month, and I'm just reporting stories from franchisees and information from FDDs. But I feel like so few people like that in the franchise industry are willing to report on the bad. And there aren't, I think the majority are doing it right, but there are some bad actors that they need to get out of this. Like, franchising is not like the right system for them, and they should, go to some other business model because it doesn't make sense, like a long partnership model. Any thoughts on that? Like, there are some great franchise brands, but I feel like there's some bad players that are giving franchising a worse brand in 2023.
You can do more damage with a snippy email or a comment, because in franchising, said to one is said to all.
Yeah. Okay.
So you just assume that everything's recorded. And so you can do it. So if you're not really wired the right way, some companies that have gotten in trouble, you look at the founder and you're just like, well, I can see over time, people don't quit. They quit contracts, but they don't quit relationships. So when you're quitting a franchise, now you might have to fight your way out. So that creates a conflict. You can look at it and say, well, and then I look at the people that really, like I mentioned, Charlie Chase, somebody I respect so deeply, firm but fair, and clear about what it is. And exiting, another thing he says is when people exit, you exit them with honor. Okay, it didn't work. The fault lies somewhere. The truth is always going to be somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
But we're not going to drag you through the streets or talk about,
You tried for 2 or 3 years, it didn't work out. Like, let's move on and keep going with life.
Let's figure out what the best way to do this is. Exit you with honor and do that. But there is, I think, private equity has created a environment where people are more likely to try to franchise things that might not need to be franchised, or might not have been ready, or might not have been fully vetted, because there are these pots of golds if you can get to a certain level. And I think it has really ushered in a lot of people that might know just sales of franchises. Well, now they're involved in company building, and they're really not intending to spend the money or to stay in it. So you end up getting 10 or 20 or 30 franchises out there, and it's a paper house. There's no infrastructure. It's been great marketing.
And sadly, this happens time and time again, where you can see the LinkedIn, the profile, like what you've done in the past is like an indicator of what you might do in the future. Yeah. Whether that's the business relationships or the brand that you're growing.
People come into Homefront Brands and they're like, this is ridiculous. I've been to 2 other Meet the Team days, and you guys look the same online and in conversations, but it's not the same. It's not even, the other thing was a house of cards, and I could see that, but well-intentioned people.
What are some of the signs? How can prospective franchisees be more attuned and have their guard up at sometimes when they're going into a discovery day, when they're looking at different franchises?
It's the standard stuff, right? Talk to franchisees, ask a lot of questions, visit them, see who's on the team, and make sure you understand how things work and who does what and what kind of people are there. Look at the backing and make sure that there's enough money. If the company is just surviving on franchise fees and they don't have pockets to be able to support it, and especially if you're selling through broker groups or a franchise sales organization, much of the franchise fee is gone. Yeah. So where are the resources coming from to actually build the technology and the infrastructure and the support team that's going to be needed? So it's not, if people take their time, it's not that hard to discern that. So, and then the franchise brokers and the franchise consultants do a good service there by providing a framework with which to evaluate franchisees and hold them accountable to run a complete process and to do their diligence. So they do a good job in that regard.
Jeff, any metrics that you're tracking daily in your franchise system, or that your franchisee should be tracking daily?
Well, yes, there's a lot.
So you have a pretty crazy dashboard?
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, ultimately, though, simple stuff, right? Leads, cost per lead, return on ad spend, conversion inside of our sales center. That's another. We have an in-house sales center, so we're converting leads to booked appointments, or in some cases, actual sales on behalf of the franchisees. Of course, your margin, your capacity utilization. How many hotel rooms do you have? Meaning, okay, how much work can you do with the trucks and people that you have, and what's your capacity thereof, and those types of things. But you asked about metrics. I will tell you this is one of the truest things I learned. And there's a tiny little story with it, but it goes. So we're in this ice storm situation with Advanaclean, and it was in the early 2000s. And it was a 3-week power out event in Charlotte. And pipes leak, not when they freeze, but when they thaw. So every day there was a new batch of hundreds and hundreds as power came on across the neighborhoods, hundreds and thousands of water damages. So we had been out running. We'd been out till all 4 a.m, and everything but one box truck was out. And we had a girl named Julia Brown. She answers the phone, and somebody says, "Hey, I've got water in my building. We're flooded." And our first question was always, "Is everybody okay?" And you think about that. It's because sometimes it's, "Hey, my house just had a fire. Oh, who's your insurance company? What's your deductible?" Okay. Well, my pets are all dead and my fish boiled, but we all made it out all right. Thanks for asking. Right. So we did that. And then we'd say, what's the source of the water? Is it turned off? How many rooms are affected? What's the floor covering? Yes, we're on the way. And she did that routine and got the information, but everybody was sacked out and sleeping. And so she forwarded the phones to the service. She jumped in the truck. She drove all the way down 45 minutes, knocked on the door, and signed a $100,000 water damage job.
Huh.
So people would say that that's because of culture, or like, why would she think that she was authorized to do it? And what I've really learned, and looking back on it, is that people blame culture for high performing organizations. She knew that we never missed a job, number one, but the culture is established by time-based metrics. So 99% of our calls answered in 2 rings or less, solving the customer's problem within 10 minutes, on site within an hour, insurance estimate out within 24 hours of the last minute on the job, and so on and so on and so on. So when you apply time-based to your metrics, because I could ask you what your KPIs are, and you'd say, well, it's this, it's a number of this and a number of that and a number of this, and maybe a percentage thrown in here for good measure. But when you really go through and you build the systems to do the time-based metrics, that's when performance really accelerates, because of it's got to be done by then or within that.
I love that. Time-based metrics. And then I'd further say, time-based results, where there's been studies on like big brands like Chick-fil-A and Wawa's, because of the community and corporate culture they create, people hold the door out longer. Guests and employees hold the door open like another 6 seconds for someone to come in. That's amazing. That's like such a big sign, where that's like on the results side, but like that's like a clear sign that something's going on, right?
Yeah, high performance is blamed upon the culture, but the culture is really created by time-based metrics.
I love that. Jeff,
and hot dogs and hamburgers on Friday.
And the gazebo.
Yeah, and a gazebo.
Any concluding thoughts for prospective franchisees?
Nothing is fatal. Don't be afraid. If you decided today that you wanted to be an Alaskan fishing guide and you started making decisions against it, you would ultimately become one. Be intensely focused, be intellectually humble, and be a rabid learner, and you will succeed in whatever it is you want to do.
I love it, Jeff. What's the best way for people that want to join the Homefront franchise family to get in contact and explore one of the 6 and growing brands that you guys have?
Yep, just go to homefrontbrands.com. We've got plenty of holes on the website that you can fall into and reach out to us for information. You can see all of our brands highlighted on the homepage there. For me, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. That is the best way to do it, or follow me on the gram, because I'm huge on the gram with almost 1,300 followers. But if you reach out to me on LinkedIn, in my bio on LinkedIn, there's a link to my Undercover Boss episode from 2017 with Advanticlean. So that's there. And then please, our On the Homefront podcast that we launched just 4 months ago, we're up to number 42 on Apple for entrepreneurship. And we've had really household names on there. And even though these people are, very, very famous people, I force them into our format to go back and talk about how they grew up and then how they went from who they were to who they are, so that our listeners can learn from their journey, like how to make those decisions in the point. And that's what it's really about for entrepreneurs, is making the right decisions at the right time and putting themselves in a better situation, and be courageous about it, because nothing's fatal. We only go around one time. And, if you and I, Patrick, died on this podcast, it's not because we're doing the podcast. It's from unhealthy life choices.
I love that. A lot to unpack for those that listen to today's podcast or watch on YouTube. And we'll include the links to your podcast, your book, as well as the Homefront.com if they're interested in exploring the brand. Jeff, thanks.
You're welcome. On the Homefront with Jeff DUDAN. Check us out on Spotify and Apple. And Patrick, it's been a pleasure getting to know you and speaking with you again.
Thanks, Jeff.